I'm going to move around a little bit and not use the podium. I hope that's okay with people. I'll be walking a little stiffly, though. I mentioned it to a few friends that I actually am still recovering from a ski trip just a couple of weeks ago. Finished out the ski season with my oldest son, my 17-year-old son. And the main reason I'm walking around stiffly is because I did that and I am 50 years old now. So if you want, thank you. Yeah, clap because I made it to 50. Thank you so much. If you want a really good reminder, which most of us don't, of what it feels like to be 50, go skiing with teenagers. Having 3 teenage boys, I can tell you that it is easily a tremendous physiological reminder of what a challenge it is. But that's not the biggest thing. So you certainly get thigh burn the minute you're out there, and then you're recovering, as I am, literally recovering 10 days later. But there's a psychological piece that helps us, that helps remind us of the downside of what it feels like to be 50. And that is that, you know, just 2 years ago, the same kids that were asking you to buckle their boots and take the sleeve and wrap it over the glove so no cold air gets in there, I wish someone would do that for me, are now taking off and leaving you in the dust. Right after they still actually ask you to wrap up their gloves, by the way. And it's really demoralizing because then you're like, you know, you're trying to keep up with them and you can't do it. But there's even another part to that psychology. There's the cultural reminder of what it feels like. Because if you go skiing, and if you go skiing with teenagers, you have to enter into what's called the terrain park. And a terrain park is a foreign land inhabited by foreign people who speak a foreign language. And the terrain park, for those of you who don't ski, it's not just like there's stuff in the way, like they put jumps and pipes and rails and boxes, and to me that's like this stuff's in the way. To the teenagers, this stuff's fun. So with teenagers, you invariably enter this land, and when you enter this land, there are teenagers whipping by you at 100 miles an hour. They're going so fast that their pants are actually falling down, right? That's how fast they're going. I always want to go up to them and say, you must be cold, let me do it. It would be awkward, obviously, to do that. But if they're not whizzing by you, they're then aggregating in a spot and sitting down. Now there's 10 kids sitting down. So I ski up to this one place. Brendan skis up next to me, and I said to the one guy, hey, how's it going? He says, good. And he says to me, you going to drop in? I said, excuse me? He goes, you going to drop in, dude? So I said, look over to Brendan, who patiently says, Dad, it just means, are you going to go? Are you going to go? Are you going to start? Are you going to go down the hill? Yeah, I'm going to drop in. Drop in any minute now. So I thought I'd handle that real well. And then he goes to me, cool, well, what are you going to throw down, dude? Excuse me? So I said, what are you going to throw down, dude? That only means is, you know, what trick are you going to do off the first jump? What are you going to throw down? What trick are you going to do? Oh, okay. I'll tell you, I'm going to throw down a move that takes me carefully around that first jump to arrive safely on the other side. Dude. I wasn't going to throw down anything, at least not on purpose, but, you know, it's demoralizing. Learn how to be one. I said, well, let me start with myself. So I went back, and this is actually a family picture. This is on my father's side. This is my grandpa Tony and his parents, the affable Alfonso and Maria Lucia. Now, I know you're laughing. So let me just say, there's 2 things you're thinking of. This looks like anything but a group of nice guys. And I know you're thinking one other thing, and I'm going to say it for you, because I know you're all too nice to say it. Not a good-looking crew. And this is what poor Brendan and I have to deal with. Some people have Tim McGraw and Faith Hill. We have Alfonso and Maria Lucia, but that's the best we could do. The fact of the matter was, Grandpa Tony was the nicest guy in the world. I'm convinced that before 1945 it was illegal to smile in photographs, so I'm pretty sure. Now, after 1945, apparently the law had changed. My father, in the middle, Ben Rogers, sitting there seemingly in his underwear, which in those days passed for bathing attire, in a nice beach picture. That's a teenager picture between his future wife, my mom, and a twin sister. So they're a bunch of teenagers on the beach and, you know, engaging in the wacky, edgy shenanigans of rabbit ears during the picture. But the fact of the matter was, you know, this was what kids did in 1949, and you could tell this is kind of like the 1949 equivalent of a teenage Facebook picture, you know? You know it wasn't today's Facebook picture because, you know, nobody's flipping the bird hole. And there's another universal principle that existed when you looked at it theologically, anthropologically, and philosophically, and that was this whole concept of balance. Balance. That we need to achieve balance in organizations and avoid extremism. So Aristotle, who was, you know, one of the great Greek philosophers, you always think of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, like everybody knows them, like they were the cool philosophers, like the brat pack of, you know, of philosophy. And Aristotle was the youngest, and they actually did talk about a lot of good for the group philosophy and beliefs. But one of the things that they talked about was this balance, this sense of avoiding the extremes. And when you look at some of these attributes in each of these columns, and you look at each of the extremes, you start to recognize people that you worked with. Maybe in the past. You know, maybe at one point in time you played ball for Coach Excess. You know, who like to be vulgar and irascible and overly ambitious. Or maybe you work for an organization run by a CEO, you know, a chief excess officer. You know, who was boastful and spiteful. And I love the fact that in 510 BC or 350 BC, Aristotle was calling people buffoons. Can't believe that that word existed in 350 BC, but I'm so glad it goes back that far. Or perhaps it worked right now when somebody works for the senior vice president of deficiency. You know, a woman or a man who was just petty and spiritlessness and just callous. Perhaps, despite the fact that we all believe we're nice guys, perhaps there's one of these people or more in this room right now. You know, if there is, you know who you are, and so do we. Let's be honest. So who are these people really? Here's how I found out and understood eBay. This is a true story, I got to tell it to you. I had heard of eBay, but I really didn't understand. I'm a boomer, by the way. You saw a low-tech guy, you know, boomer's a low-tech guy, so I really didn't understand how it worked. So I couldn't really grasp it because the doubt side of my nice guy equation kept kicking in, which is say, yeah, but you kind of like sell stuff and to people you never met, and they pay you, and you ship it, and you have to believe that that's going to happen. The way I learned about it was from my poor son, Brendan, in the back. 2 years ago, he was 14 years old, and we have this thing in our town called, you probably have it, Spring Cleanup Week. And that's where each spring you put out all your stuff at the curb, you know, and it's all your junk, really. But there's a tremendous secondary marketplace for it because the antiquers and the secondary dealers come around, and frankly, all the stuff disappears. Most of the stuff disappears before the town ever comes. Well, under the guise, I guess, and the thinking that, you know, the old adage, one man's trash is another man's treasure, right? So it's fantastic. Well, I think Brendan thought, hey, I'm going to get in on this action. So I woke up one morning, the first week before any of the secondary market had come, and he's across the street at my neighbor's yard with a cart. He's piling stuff on. Filing cabinets, broken super soakers. So seeing my neighbor's junk pile dwindling and mine about to grow, I quickly run out and intercepted Brendan on the driveway. I said, Brendan, what are you doing with all this junk? And highly offended, he says, this isn't junk, Dad, this is good stuff. And I'm going to sell it on eBay. I said, eBay. Now I'm going to find out what it was all about. So I watched Brendan participate in this thing called eBay. And unfortunately, the truth be told, he didn't get to sell any of this in his first foray into eBay. It just didn't, Super Soaker just didn't work. And apparently in this case, the global marketplace for eBay auction items deemed that one man's trash was just another man's trash. And in this first foray. But I will say in the two ensuing years, Brendan has become quite adept. And let me tell you, this guy has bought and sold more stuff on eBay than I can even remember, than I even know about, I'm pretty sure. In fact, if you go in our house, if it ain't nailed down, it's going to be on eBay. Yeah, you think we need this? Anybody using this? Yes, Brendan, that's the refrigerator. Somebody's using it, dude. If you came and visited me, there's a good chance your car would be on eBay. But here's how I learned about why eBay was